Welcome to the Healers Podcast, where we inspire and guide healers through business expansion. We give voice to incredibly abundant healers to share their stories. We dive into the quantum field to unlock the energies of conscious creation. We also develop digital tools to help you grow, which you can find on healless.com. I'm your host, Yuli, and I'm grateful you chose to join this space. Now let's go deep.
Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another really powerful episode of the Healers Podcast. And I have a feeling it's going to be powerful because our guest today is Tannaz Hosseinpour, and she's the founder of Minutes on Growth Community and Podcast, a certified life coach specializing in relationships, both with oneself and with others, as well as conscious manifestation. With an academic background in conflict resolution law and counseling psychotherapy, she combines these diverse skills to empower individuals to create meaningful connections and manifest their desired reality. And I'm just so excited to have you. And we're just chatting before and trying to choose a topic for this conversation. As all of you know, we go just usually unscripted and pretty organic. And there were just so many themes that came up, and all of them are very powerful and deep, and could, we could spend hours on each. But some of the things that came up is the ideas of being this perfect conduit of the universe and trusting the voice, being open to receiving guidance and signs, balancing feminine and masculine energy. Some really big topics. So I don't have one intention. I usually set intention for those episodes, but all of them just sound like exactly my cup of tea. And I would love to spend the next hour, just getting your perspective on things. And your energy is so beautiful, and I'm just grateful to have you here. So welcome to Naz.
Thank you, Yuli. Grateful to be here and to share with you. And thank you for creating the space.
Absolutely. So since we already dropped some of those hints into our audience, I would love to kind of just learn more about your perspective, because I have a sense that you have a very unique perspective on life, universe, what we call manifestation, even though it's been so overused these days, and everyone has their manifestation technique. And there's here's your 5 tips and here's your 3 steps. So whatever it is, I want to hear from you. How do you see things?
Ooh, beautiful question. How do we see the universe? I see the universe as, for me, it's like a mirror that's been shattered into a million pieces, and each one of us is one piece of that. And when we all come together, that community, that connection creates the full image. We are all parts of each other. That which you see in me exists within you. That which I see in you exists within me. And I love how Ram Dass would say, we're all just walking each other home. So it's something big that we're part of, but we're also something big ourselves. So it's the universe is within me, and I'm within the universe. That's how I'd like to see it. That's how I've been seeing it over the past. I started the spiritual work when I was in my early 20s. So let's say in the past 13 years, and slowly building a much better relationship with the universe as the day goes by, and just trusting. It's for me, the most important relationship one needs to spend time on. And it's like the best cheerleader, the best friend you can have. And if you can cultivate that relationship, it kind of trickles into every other relationship. And it's a great foundation to have.
Absolutely. And how do you cultivate those relationships? I mean, people have a lot of different practices and techniques. If we had to look at your journey or your even daily routine, what does the relationship look like?
Ooh, the relationship started with a life quake, with an event that changed my whole life overnight, that was outside of my scope of control. And Rumi has a beautiful poem, and he says, the wound is where the light enters you. And I think for me, it was breaking open. And my mom walked in with a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and she said, I think this is going to make you feel better. And it really did. It opened my heart to Dr. Wayne Dyer, to Deepak Chopra, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and all of them after that. Bless their souls for being on this realm to share all of that with us. And then it's just over the years, it's kind of figuring out how I wanted to feel when I thought of the universe. And so my undergraduate degree was in religion. I've always been so amazed at how religion impacts human beings and how it influences our behaviors and our belief systems. But I always saw it from a very analytical perspective, from a very logical perspective. And so when my heart shattered and my soul shattered, and it kind of opened that space for all this new information to come in, it was all about how I felt. So how did I feel when I was meditating? How did I feel when I was sitting in front of a mirror crying and having make-believe conversations to this entity called God, but looking into my own eyes, which I later found out was mirror work and Louise Hay's work. How do I feel going into religious sites even? Which ones bring me this sense of ease in my heart? I was just recently in Southeast Asia for 4 months, and I was traveling and doing a lot of research on the correlation between mental health and faith and which spaces uplift me. So for me, my spiritual practice is going to spaces where I feel inner peace and safety and security in my body. Sometimes that's a Buddhist temple. Sometimes that's the trail by my house. Sometimes that's sitting with someone I love. And sometimes that's sitting in my closet under my clothes and just taking slow, deep breaths. So it's all coming back to the body, and the safety of the body for me is my spiritual practice.
So talk about that journey, right? Coming from this shattered pieces and then turning to who you are today. It sounds like it was quite a leap to make.
Yes. So I was 20 when that life quake happened. I just finished my undergraduate degree, again, in religion, political science. The intention was to go to law school. And I was always great at speaking as a child. So my parents were like, you were meant to be a lawyer. And that kind of was conditioned into me. Went to England, did my master's in law, and being from the Middle East, we're a very oil-rich country. So oil-rich whole region, but specifically the countries that I was raised in, the United Arab Emirates and Iran. And, my dad was like, why don't you go into oil and gas trade management? I was like, great, I'd love to study. I was like, okay, I'll go there. And I studied that. And the intention was to go into being a corporate lawyer for oil industries. And I came back to the Middle East and I was like, no, I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel aligned with my values, with who I am. It feels like, I have to drag myself out of bed. Thinking about it made me feel icky on the inside. And so I had, this time as a self-inflicted, I would say, life quake, was I don't know who I am anymore. And I was doing more of the inner work, and I was, reading more of these books. And it's who are you? Ask yourself, who am I? Not who my parents want me to be, not who my community wants me to be, but who am I? And I went through another 6 months of really dark, and I've always known what I wanted to do. So it was really hard to kind of be okay, scratch it all out. What am I meant to do with my life? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And sitting one day, so one of my friends reached out to me and was like, you should start a podcast. I was like, what is that? It was 2016, 17. He was like, no, you should do a political podcast. I've always have so much insights into this. And I sat with it. At that point, I knew that nothing is a coincidence. Universe speaks to us through other people. I sat with it. I was like, okay. I eventually was I would love to do a podcast, but not on politics. I want to share all the lessons that I'm learning with all these spiritual books that I'm reading. Right? And I have a very teacher archetype. So it's I want to simplify these topics. I want to share what I'm learning and make it easy for everyone to have access. And so that's how the podcast came about. And I started a book club because I love to read. And one of the girls in the book club, a couple of months later, was like, you should be a coach. I'm like, what is that? She was like, because I went on Instagram, I was like, coach as a hashtag. I was like, wow, I have no idea what that is. When did my coaching certification? And I was like, okay, well, they're niche down. And because I had done dispute resolution law, which had a lot of family mediation, which had a lot of fighting and couples, the divorce and separation, it was always in the back of my mind of why do people get here? How do people get here? You're kind of in love when you get married. And so I was like, I would love to niche down on relationships and especially relationship with self. And I had practiced and, gone to certifications for Reiki and other healing modalities. And I was like, what if I kind of combine them both? What if I bring spirituality with these scientific research-backed relational skills and tools? It doesn't have to be one or the other. And that's really how my business started. And it's grown over the past 7, 8 years. And I keep reminding myself every day when I wake up, and I was sharing this with you earlier today when we were speaking, I remind myself that nothing belongs to me. And my goal is my job, my responsibility is to wake up, to be a medium, a vessel for creative force to flow through me, and to let the universe do its magic through me. And I am the conduit. My fingers are typing, but it's not me who's typing. There's another energy that's enabling this typing, which reminds me of Dr. Wayne Dyer, who would say he would wake up every day at the same time and he would write. He would just sit there at the table and the pen would write. So that's how I've just been growing my business. I wake up and I say, universe, tell me where to go, what to say, and who to say it to. And that's been my favorite prayer ever since.
Well, thank you, universe, for bringing you here to say your words to us, because it's just so beautiful and inspiring. And you mentioned that your business has grown since then. And something else that you said when we were chatting before, that you don't do any marketing. People just find you. And that's incredible to me. So I would love to double click on that and learn, who are the type of people that come to you? How do they find you? If you don't do any marketing, how does this universe work for you?
So interesting. And it's not that I don't want to do marketing. I just never felt the need to do it. So my first major clients came from the book club. One of the girls in the book club that I have was like, oh, it'd be great. I work for this corporation. I would love for you to speak. Through that talk came a client. Through that client came other clients. And it kind of just became like a referral of people, telling the other person, hey, this is someone who's been helping me navigate through X, Y, and Z. So that's how that was one stream of clients that came to me. And when I started the podcast, I started an Instagram page. And I would just share. I would whatever I would read, and if you go back to my old posts, you'll see the quality of the posts were so different. And I'm a reader, so I would write written posts. And fast forward a couple of years, one day I just had this intuition. I was like, I need to connect with one more woman. So I went on Meetup, and I found the first meetup group for women. And I went there and I connected with one of the wonderful, wonderful woman who was there. She was the leader. We had a conversation and she was like, I've been wanting to do a retreat. I was like, oh my God, I would love to do a retreat with you. That's how the retreat came. And then while we were, preparing for the retreat, one of my co-facilitators said, it's time for you to do videos. It's like, if you watch my first video, you will laugh, because I was so stressed. I was holding my hands and I had to re-record a million times. But it's people came to me and said, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And I started with my videos, and then started growing a community on social media. And now there's some clients that come through there and some through referrals. But it was just suggestions by others that I didn't just see as a coincidence. I was like, this is how God speaks to us, light, source, creation, however, whatever you want to phrase it. My job is to just show up and to take inspired action. So that's how the marketing works.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's just so inspiring for many people. But I think what is wonderful in your story that, you heard some of those things, you heard the signs, and you didn't just listen, you actually went and did some actionable steps with it, right? Which I think a lot of people are missing sometimes. And when they try to manifest and, they get the sign, but then the self-doubt kicks in, right? Just like with your video story. I'm sure, like, for most people, when someone tells you should just go do videos, first reaction would be, if you're not used to that, right, you would cringe. Like, no, absolutely not. Like, I'm not good at this. I don't like myself on camera. This is going to be so stressful. I don't have time. I mean, there's so many excuses, right? But you actually stuck with it and not only recorded it a million times, but had the courage to upload it on YouTube. So tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to really normalize what you said because, I've been recording since 2017. And I think it's only the past maybe couple of months that I've become comfortable with the sound of my own voice. So it took a long time to get to a place where, because, usually when you hear yourself, you're like, ugh, why do I sound like that? And, I'm currently completing my master's in counseling psychotherapy, and my teachers keep giving me this feedback of, you have such a therapeutic voice. Like, it's so calming. Only now am I becoming comfortable. So it's okay if you're not comfortable with that which you're uncomfortable overnight. Sometimes it takes many, many, many years, but it's just still showing up and doing it. And honestly, imposter syndrome is real. I had so much fear of judgment because in my community, you're either a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, and that these are really the only respectable, quote unquote, respectable fields that you're in. So for me to say, I'm not going to continue working in the legal industry, my parents were shooketh. They were like, did you just study for like 7, 8 years to say, no, I'm doing a U-turn? What are we going to, like, at first my parents thought this was a joke. This was a hobby. So I really, not only was I like, what am I doing? But I was like, I don't want to embarrass my family's name. I don't want to embarrass my parents. I don't want all their sacrifice to go. I had like guilt. So it was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of fear, but I just kept remembering that, like, no one's journey was really smooth. Like Dr. Wynne's journey wasn't smooth. Louise Hay's journey wasn't smooth. This is just part of it. And part of it also was I started studying Kabbalah, and part of the teachings of Kabbalah is everything comes from the light, and you chose this life. So that was also a very empowering thought for me personally of, I chose it. I'm here. I have to show up. I have to honor what is exciting me. And if all these opportunities are showing up, it's not a coincidence. It's coming from the light as proof of I'm on the right path. So suck it up. It's not about you. I kept telling me it's not about you. It's about the change that your work will do. It's about bigger than you. Don't let the ego make you think it's all about you. So I had to keep reminding myself of that over and over and over again.
Wow, this resonates so much. And first of all, thank you again for sharing so openly. Well, just, to touch back on the voice idea, like I so agree, like we're all so self-critical ourselves, and it definitely resonates with me. I think I was listening to my last recording of this podcast, and it's been almost 2 years of recording. And for the first time in my life, I said, oh, wow, actually, I sound good finally. Because before I thought I would be too slow because, a lot of people are impatient these days. And I just don't always like have my thoughts together because I record just organically, right? So I don't have all my key points. And sometimes I go long into some topics and it would create some insecurities. But then I was talking to an amazing psychic, and she said that my voice is actually one of my healing tools and one of my power tools. And I said, wait a second, my voice, this thing that I think is like so imperfect that I need to work on. And it totally changed my perspective. So it took, like, for me as well, almost 2 years to get to this place. And then another thing you mentioned, this idea of your family expectations, right? And our backgrounds. And I mean, to again resonate so much. And I know so many people that get into the holistic healing, coaching, spiritual teaching place. A lot of them come from very, very different background. And we see more of that even these days. It's becoming more of a, still not a legitimate path, but we're getting there, a more acceptable path, right? For people. I'm just seeing it. It's such a huge, I call it trend, but it really is, because people just realize, oh, you can also do this, right? There's just so many great role models and examples now, and you being one of them. So I think it's just such an important conversation. And I'm grateful for people like yourself who, you tip your toes in the corporate legal world, and you were confident enough to say no to all of that with all the perks and benefits and, the material gains that you could have had, and really dedicate yourself to the path. It requires just such courage, because it's so often misunderstood, undervalued by society, by our own parents. And it just takes so much like inner strength to know that this is your path. And I agree, just knowing, connecting to the spiritual world and realizing this is the path your soul chose for yourself, or your higher self chose. It makes everything easier, but it's still not easy enough to operate in our 3D world, right? That lives by those rules and those expectations and labels.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like as you were sharing that, it's all these like memories come back of like, even friends' judgments of like, what's wrong with her? Like, why is she such a hippie? Like, hippie is the word, right? Why is she such a hippie now? What's wrong with her? Why isn't she drinking anymore? Why isn't she wearing like, designer clothes anymore? Like, it's a shift in identity. And I think people who've been with us, the older versions of us, it's hard for them to also grieve that version. And so we kind of need to create space for people, to see this version and to grieve the old version. So we got to be compassionate with them as well. But it really is a process. And just, again, like when a challenge comes up, it's easier to say, I'm going to go back to what is easy, what is comfortable, what is familiar, what is quote unquote secure, and saying, life is so short to live life without this fire within me. When I was in Southeast Asia, I would have sometimes sessions at 4 a.m. and 3 a.m. because of time difference. And there was never a moment that I was sad about getting up, even though I love to sleep. I was so excited. And I was just like, what, this is what life is about. It's being excited about the work that you do. And that excitement helps propel you through the challenges that are inevitable. They will show up in any life and in any career. But I think that passion and that excitement and just that belief that it's about something bigger than me really has helped me not go back to my people-pleasing tendencies when it comes to my family, or change who I really am, or mask or hide parts of myself to fit into places where I used to, be in the past.
How does your family accept it now that you're more established? I mean, you booked with clients. There's a book coming up that we haven't mentioned yet. I mean, it seems like you're really, grounded yourself in this as a career, right? Did that change anything in your immediate relationship with friends and family?
I think with friends, definitely over the years. With my family, it was a little bit harder, particularly with my father. Like, I remember I first wrote a book on children's, it was a children's spiritual book. And he was like, that's so cute. Like, it was for him. I was like, oh, it's such a cute thing you just did. Okay. But like, that's a hobby. And then I partook in this Guinness World Records book project. Again, it was like, oh, okay, interesting. And then this is the third book. And now I think it's, again, and I understand, parents have expectations, and, they, as Eckhart Tolle says, they live their dreams through us. And it's never from a place of ill intent. It's, I want the best for you. And that's their perception of best. So yeah, definitely. When my father came around, I was like, okay, the job's done. Because my mom, she's always been spiritual. She was the spiritual one. So she was all like, oh, I love that you're doing this, but I'm still worried for you. And now she's like, now that I have a team and everything, she's like, okay. She's like, when I first started building my team, she's like, wow, you have a team? I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, now I'm not worried anymore. For her, that was her perception of success. And, they came around with time, but I didn't try to fight them or say like, you have to see me where I am. I kind of understood it. And I think just not fighting them created space for that new vision of me to come to life.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing this personal story. I intentionally asked you because I just feel like there's so many listeners that can resonate with all of this, everything that we're discussing. Really, I think there's not one person who is in this holistic healing space that has never been questioned by society, whether it's their immediate family or society in general. And I think it's one of the most important topics when we think about empowerment of the holistic community. I think society acceptance, I would say, would be a number one on that list. So the more we can talk about it, I always create space for that. And thank you for bringing it up because it wasn't actually on the agenda. Well, nothing was an agenda, so we knew something is going to come through. But I think this one is a really strong one. And then, so thank you for being an advocate and sharing your story. I think I also wanted to come back to something that we mentioned in the very beginning, and this idea of the feminine and masculine energy. And you strike me as somebody so balanced, right? You have a team, you're running a business, you're fully booked, you're this successful entrepreneur, right? Another word that people a lot of times avoid in this space, right? Don't see themselves as entrepreneurs or business owners, but you are. But yet, you balance this calm, collected, deep spiritual side. And I think it's another topic that I love to discuss because as somebody who's also kind of dancing between those two worlds and really trying to find a balance. I mean, we're so many different things, right? Every day we're like so many different hats. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing and for bringing this topic up. So I think there's a lot of content out there on women should only be in their feminine and men should only be in their masculine. And, this, for me, in my opinion, that creates an unhealthy experience of self. And if we want to look into the feminine, masculine energy, we want to go to the root of it. We come to yin and yang energy. And the whole point of the yin and yang is they're two parts of one whole. It's creating that balance. When we're too much into our masculine energy, I think that's when we lead to burnout. And when we're too much in our feminine energy, I think sometimes we lack the follow through to bring the vision to life. And so for me, it's always, when I first became familiar with these two topics, I had to do a lot. I'm a very a nerd at heart. So I'm always studying and I love to understand similar to what you were saying, just resonating more with science-backed topics. And so really diving into, okay, what's the feminine energy about? The feminine energy is about intuition. It's about flow. It's about surrender. It's the playfulness. What's the masculine energy about? It's all about drive. It's about taking inspired action. It's about discipline. Too much of one, not great. Too much of discipline is very rigid. What about soft discipline? And that's the topic of my actually next book is how can we cultivate the energy of soft discipline, meaning I show up, but with grace. I show up, I fall down, but instead of being self-critical, I understand that this is part of the journey and I get up and I say, I'm going to try again. More compassion, more self-forgiveness. So it's not that we're not going to just pick one. We're going to integrate the two. And I see this. Sometimes I see someone too much in their feminine. How do I know they're too much in their feminine and it's an underdeveloped masculine? They have 1,000,001 beautiful ideas, but they just keep it at that level, at that realm. It's like it comes. So I always say, like, if we're using our 7 chakras, the vision comes through the crown. You see it through your eyes. You speak about it. You feel it. And when we get to the belly part, that's the yang energy of like activating it, action, action. It kind of gets stuck there. And they don't allow that vision to be birthed through them. With a little bit of drive, with a little bit of discipline, kind of cultivating those traits, we can bring it into the realm. We can, use our creative force, and we can ground with it on this earth, and we can become that medium. So what I teach my clients all the time is, don't look over one thing. You can take that flowy energy, you can take that intuition into the most male-oriented industries, and you can take that discipline into the most fluid and like creative industries. You get to choose. And it has to be a play that feels, a dance that feels grounded to you, ease to you. You don't need to go through life in a fight or flight mode. We can choose better for ourselves. We need to change this narrative of success is hard. It's challenging, but with the right tools, we can navigate through it with more ease and grace. That ease and grace, it's actually my Wi-Fi username, ease and grace. It's my favorite 2 words. How can we live life through ease and grace? So that's the balancing of the 2.
That's so beautiful. I was just taking mental notes as you were speaking, because I love this idea of birthing things and the way you describe it with the energy centers. It's just such a beautiful visual. And this showing up with grace is, I can see it becoming my little mantra of my altar. It's really, really beautifully put. I am excited for your book and dive deep into it. Because, the subject of discipline is actually a very interesting one for me as well. I just feel like my experience with discipline, and it's one of my strongest qualities, and that sometimes, causes me to burn out. But, my discipline comes from my background, right? Growing up in the communist Russia, serving in the military at some point of my life. You name it. There's just a lot of my personal training, right? As a young adult, as a child, was rooted in discipline. And that was the only way to succeed or to even survive, right? Forget succeed. It wasn't, back then it was a part of the vocabulary. It was more of a survival mode. And the only way to survive was through discipline. And I really mastered that, right? Which is a great asset in business, but creates a very challenging life often. So this idea of soft discipline really resonates with me, as you can imagine.
No, thank you for sharing that. And, again, Eastern communities and, the backgrounds for me as well, discipline, that it had a negative connotation to it almost, of like, it's so rigid, it's so strict. I had a very disciplined father. So I really had to learn, because that was at the beginning of my journey as well, extremely like, so 0 to 100, so quick, always going, until I developed an autoimmune disease. And I was like, okay, started doing the books. I was like, too much cortisol, too much fight or flight. Where are you racing to? Be a little bit softer with yourself. It's not, because I was trained as a child to focus on the destination. And I had to retrain and unlearn that it's not at all about the destination. It's about the journey. Are you enjoying the process of getting there? And so if I'm doing something, and I notice it now too, of like, I put reminders around everywhere, like these little note Post-its, and I put these messages for myself. If I notice that I'm feeling really tense doing something, pause. How can we bring more joy into this? How can we bring more playful energy into this? How can we bring more softness into this? Because if you're going to get through, like if I'm going to create this product or create whatever it is that I'm creating with the energy of, I need to get through this, this needs to be done, that your energy gets stuck to the byproduct. That's not the energy you want to put out there. You want to put the energy of, she enjoyed doing it. I can tell that it's a soft energy. It's a light energy. So similar to what you were sharing, I had to do a lot of unlearning around destination versus journey, and retrain myself to enjoy the journey. I want to give this tip because it's such a practical tip. But one of the easiest, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to do that, but most challenging as well, it turns easy, it starts as challenging, is through driving. Can you enjoy the traffic? Can you enjoy driving slow within the speed limit without going like this? And eventually you'll get to a point where, like me, I got pulled over by the cops in Japan because I was driving too slow. And I called my husband and he's like, I don't understand how we're married, because he always gets pulled over for driving too fast. But traffic is a great way to work on that.
Amazing. I love that story so much. But you mentioned also another topic before that I would love to just explore a little more with you, because for me, it's another big and fascinating one. And it's this idea of taking an inspired action, right? And I think this is from working in this holistic community for a few years now. This, I would say, would be the common thread among a lot of people that have different blocks and challenges in growing their business, right? They, like you said, exactly that example, they get all those beautiful ideas. Yeah, I want to do a retreat. I want to do this practice. I want to do this practice. And then they find themselves like a year later, okay, none of this kind of came through and life happened. And, we all busy these days, no matter which part of the world you live in, all of us kind of like multitask. We have all those different lives and obligations, and then kind of life happens, and then you just go through this day-to-day stuff, and you forget your big inspirations that come through. You don't forget them, but you don't know always what does the inspired action look like.
Yeah. Honestly, collaboration. For me, it's been collaboration. It's when a vision comes through, and if I feel I'm not that I don't have the drive, but I need help. We all need help. I reach out to someone that I know has shared visions, similar visions, and I pitch it. I'm like, do you want to do this together? And just bringing someone else's energy into it, A, accountability, and B, two insights are more powerful than one, in my opinion. And so a lot of the things that I took inspired action on were as a result of collaboration. My first retreat, again, it was a collaboration, like coaching programs, collaboration. So sometimes we need to come partner up with someone else and birth it together as a team. And repetition, like neuroplasticity, repetition helps us build new neural pathways. So as you use, the beauty of collaboration to build that pathway of taking action, it becomes easier to take action as a solo person later on. But I would say reach out to people who are doing similar things and hold each other accountable and rise together. And then you'll get into the habit of doing it on your own.
This is such a beautiful and profound advice. Thank you. Thank you for articulating it so well. I mean, you've just been a really wealth of inspiration. I'm just so grateful to have your very balanced feminine and masculine energy on this podcast. And I can't believe we're running out of time. And I feel like we definitely have room for part two, hopefully one day. And I just really wanted to thank you for, touching on so many big and deep subjects in such a short period of time and doing it so eloquently. So you've been an amazing partner to this conversation already.
Thank you. Thank you, Yuli, for creating the space. I love the podcast. I love, the business side of it is usually the side that is kind of maybe scares people off, and bringing different perspectives into it. And I hope your audience is appreciative of that, because that's so amazing. And it's so powerful of the work that you do. So thank you for creating the space. And I hope this served, the person who needed to hear it. So thank you.
Absolutely. I have no doubt. And thank you again for your kind words and for all those vulnerable shares and being here with us.
Thank you.